Hey everybody, welcome into the back room. I'm Andy Ostroy. We have Elie Honig back with us. We'll chat with Elie in just a moment, but first, thanks for tuning in. We appreciate you listening, and we'd love to hear your comments. So email us at backroomandy@gmail.com and or post on our social media, and we'll read some feedback next time. And if you like the podcast, please rate and review and follow or subscribe, and you'll be notified every time we post a new episode. So Elie Honig is CNN's senior legal analyst. He previously worked for 14 years as a federal and state prosecutor. He is also the national best-selling author of 2 books, Hatchet Man, How Bill Barr Broke the Prosecutor's Code and Corrupted the Justice Department, and Untouchable, How Powerful People Get Away with It. He also writes a weekly column for New York Magazine and for Cafe.com, and he hosts 2 podcasts for Vox Media. He teaches at Rutgers University and is special counsel to New Jersey law firm Lowenstein Sandler. His latest book is When You Come at the King, Inside DOJ's Pursuit of the President, from Nixon to Trump. Elie, welcome back into the back room.
Always happy to be with you. Where are you? You look like you're in a Star Wars base.
May the 4th, May the 7th be with you.
Right, exactly.
No, in my studio with my completely nondescript, weird beehive nest background.
You look like you're in a rebel pod, escape pod or something.
Rebel yell, baby. That's me. So let's start with Epstein. Yesterday, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick went before the House Oversight Committee for a 7-hour private closed-door interview. It was not videotaped. It was not under oath. And so we have no idea what transpired other than what we've been told by several Democrats who were in the room. So given what we do know based on that, what do you make of that interview? And do you think it was worth it in the end?
Well, Democrats were certainly not satisfied with his answers. I do think it's worth it to drag him in and make him answer questions. Like you, I would have much preferred, to be able to see him. And by the way, Lutnick to me is different than everybody else. I mean, look, everybody has to answer questions, but Lutnick is currently a cabinet secretary. Like, he has an extra layer of accountability and answers that he owes. Of course, the fundamental problem with Howard Lutnick is not only that he was friends with Epstein, but he basically lied about it. He did lie about it in public. He was on a podcast some time ago, and he has this really bull crap telling of how, I guess he lived next door to Epstein or very close to, he said next door to Epstein in Manhattan. Yep. And he has this story, you've heard the clip, but he's like, and I walked into the room and I saw his massage chair and I thought, what a gross man. I'll never be near this man again. And he's disgusting. Well, it turns out
not a bad Lutnick impression, if I may say.
Thank you. Yes, I'm glad you picked up on that. But he's so self-righteous and he's so performatively disgusted in this podcast. Turns out 7 years later, Lutnick didn't just run into Jeffrey Epstein at a cocktail party, but took his family to the island. So he obviously was lying about that, saying, I'll never see this man again in 2005, for, reasons that I guess are obvious, maybe not, but, obviously he was embarrassed by the fact that he continued to go back to this guy. So Lutnick's full of crap. I think that's become clear. It sounds like, and again, we only, as you said, Andy, we only can go off the secondhand retellings of the members of Congress who came out afterwards, some of whom appeared on news. He had a bullcrap explanation for why that wasn't a contradiction and why it wasn't. I met with Epstein because I had other people with me. It's like, it depends on what the meaning of I is or something. So the guy.
It's even like we have to even take it a little further. It's like based on your impression before, he literally said this man is so disgusting. But yesterday he was like,
go near him again.
He's so disgusting that I would never go near him again. Right. But I don't mind him hanging around my kids. Like, how crazy is that?
So look, there's not evidence that Howard Lutnick committed any kind of crime. And I'm not just saying that as a stand. There is not that evidence, but there's definitely evidence that Lutnick lied pretty aggressively about the nature of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
And that just reinforces and fuels the claims of a cover-up.
Why would you lie? I mean, look, right. I've never been in this position. I don't know if you have, Andy, but I know enough people now, and I know people who've gotten in trouble after the fact, but never to the point where I've been, like ashamed to associate with them. But I don't know. I think it's just obvious intuition. If you lie about your relationship with someone, it's because you feel like there's something you need to lie about, or there's something you need to hide. Right. So, and I don't know how people expect to get away with that crap nowadays, right? Like, if you ask me when was the last time I saw someone who I hadn't seen since the 80s, and I could say if it was 82 or 87, like maybe there wouldn't be a record. But 2005 to 2012, of course there's going to be someone who knows about it or some record of it. So, clearly Lutnick was hiding something. He's dishonest. But he's the kind of guy who can just convince himself, through repetition of the lie or parsing of words. And this kind of person sort of makes me nuts as a lawyer and also just as someone in the media. But yeah, I think the guy's full of it, and I think he's disgraced himself. And I think I think that, again, as the sitting Secretary of Commerce, it's not okay for him to just sort of brush it off.
Yeah.
What consequence will come? I mean, he's not going to get impeached and removed, and he's not, probably nothing.
Not going to get fired. He's not going to get investigated by the DOJ. Like, it's just.
Nope.
So the bigger fish is former Attorney General Pam Bondi. She originally refused to testify before the same committee. She's now scheduled for May 29th. Same kind of Lutnick interview, private, not a video, no one, not under oath. What are you expecting to come of this?
So a couple things. First of all, I believe Pam Bondi's will be transcribed. So I don't think we'll get to see the video, but I think.
Well, I think Lutnick's was too, no?
Yeah. So we'll get to see the exact words. Also, the under oath thing, you'd rather have someone under oath if you want to put them under pressure to tell the truth, as they should. But it's still a crime if you lie to Congress, even if you don't, do this. So that's important to keep in mind. Pam Bondi's deposition will obviously, I don't know that she ever had any personal relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. There may be photos. I'm not sure. I don't know. But never any allegation that she did anything bad with respect to Jeffrey Epstein. The questioning here is about DOJ's handling and mishandling of the files, which, let's not forget, I know she's the former AG, but she was in charge during that time. And let me tell you what I think are the two big questions that have still not been answered by her or Todd Blanche. One is the revelation of victim names in the files. I do take their word that was inadvertent. They would be nutcases to intentionally do that. And Blanche just said, well, it was under 1%. It's like, okay, but that's not okay. Like, under 1% is still really bad if you're screwing up several people's identities. But how did that happen? Who was in charge? Has anyone been held accountable? That's number one. Number two is, and this is one of the big and unanswered questions, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, which, let's remember, was passed by every member of Congress except one. It was 427-1 in the House and unanimous in the Senate and signed by Trump, says, DOJ, you cannot withhold information or identities based on those identities potentially causing people personal embarrassment or reputational harm or political damage. So even if you might normally redact those names, which you would of uncharged people, you can't here. You have to give us those names. There are many documents, and CNN has an article. If people want to see these, it's from a month or two ago. It's titled something like 13 documents that raise unanswered questions about Epstein. But it's a series of emails where people whose sender identities are blacked out, emailing with Jeffrey Epstein about specific girls. And I don't want, I'll paraphrase it, but it's like, what about this girl? Yeah, I liked her. That one was young. This one's from whatever country. Who are those people? Those identities have been redacted, and that squarely violates the Epstein Files Transparency Act law. And DOJ has never given an accounting of that, why that is. They've never expressed any willingness to unredact that. And I think that's one of the big questions for Pam Bondi.
Mm-hmm. Let's switch to the FBI. What are your thoughts on the FBI's so-called insider threat investigation into the Atlantic reporter Sarah Fitzpatrick about her story, which painted director Kash Patel as an incompetent absentee drunk? Is there anything substantive or legal or illegal here, or is this just another abuse of power and weaponization of the government?
It's an absolute abuse of power. Let me just say also, I'm friends with Sarah. I've had her on air with me. I'm sure I've been on air with her on CNN, but I've had her on as a guest when I host on SiriusXM. I think she's a great reporter. I think first of all, the defamation lawsuit against her is ridiculous and an outrage and has no chance of success. They sourced that story to over 24 people Sarah talked with. And by the way,
this is Patel. This is Kash Patel's lawsuit.
Yeah, Kash Patel's lawsuit. It's not like the revelations in Sarah's original article were shocking. There's been tons of reporting about Kash Patel having major problems running the FBI, about members of the FBI having no confidence in him, about him having personal behavior problems, about him drinking. So it's not like Sarah's article was like, come on, I can't believe this about Kash Patel. Like, much of it has been corroborated in all sorts of other reporting. And now they're just using the power of prosecution investigation to try to intimidate her. And to her credit, she's not intimidated. She just issued a new article about his personal stash of booze, and he has a photo of it. Kash Patel with the $sign. I don't know
it's hard to sort of defend yourself from accusations of excessive drinking when you have your own personalized, personal branded bourbon stash.
And when you're guzzling beer with a hockey team in a way, like, let me tell you, Andy, like, I definitely have, like, I drank like a normal college dude at the time. Mm-hmm. If I tried to shotgun a beer like he does in that, I would be like spitting it out and like choking. He's just like, bam. But in that video. But look, I think Sarah's reporting is going to prove out. She is heavily sourced. She's very careful, and I think these lawsuits are bullcrap and will be dismissed.
But it speaks to the larger goal of intimidation and to sort of squash free speech or free and independent media. Is it so much that there's no, like all his other indictments, and I'm going to ask you about Comey next, but, Letitia James and Comey, and are they really designed to prosecute, or is it just designed to have people go, ooh, I'm not going to say what I was about to say because I don't want to.
I think it's definitely more the latter. They're not going to win, and we'll get to these. But I think it's a combination of trying to chill speech, intimidate people. Also, just, it's a big deal for people to be sued for defamation. I mean, it's really expensive to defend yourself, even if it's a meritless case. It's a big deal to be investigated, to receive a subpoena. Like, I don't know that people understand what a stress that is, what a burden that is. And we were taught, as a prosecutor, we were always taught every decision you make will impact lives in a serious way. The obvious ones are, do I charge this person or not? But even something like, am I going to subpoena this person? Subpoenas can cost people tens of thousands of dollars in legal fees to respond to. Subpoenas can cause people to lose jobs. They can impact reputations, impact family relationships. So, for even just we've opened an investigation is a major step. It's a major flexing of prosecutorial power. And I think a misuse, I think it's intended, yes, to intimidate and to chill free speech and free media.
So let's talk about the new indictment of former FBI Director James Comey on the formation of seashells, which he claims he didn't actually form, but he was walking across the. Which I believe that, but okay. I was talking. I think I was talking to Mimi Roca last week, and I said, let's just think about this for a second. This guy, according to the FBI, according to the Trump administration, was intending to cause harm to the United States president. So he had that in his mind. Happens to be walking down the beach, and lo and behold, there's a formation of seashells, which just happened to reinforce the thoughts that are already in his head. I mean, this thing is just so preposterous. But what happens here? What happens next?
This case is ridiculous and will not reach a jury. It will be dismissed by a judge. I'll tell you why in a second. But before I get there, nobody likes Jim Comey, right? And everyone has their reasons. And I'm not a fan of the guy. I think he's, I'll just read you. This is from my New York Magazine column that's coming up about this case. So basically, the premise of the piece is what we're about to talk about, how this indictment is an abuse of power and ridiculous and meritless and has no chance. But I do write this. I'll read it to you. Let's stipulate up front. Jim Comey is a legendary blowhard, an inveterate fibber, and a pretentious prig whose guiding principle is that he alone has access to some mystical code of morality that conveniently justifies his outrageous conduct over the past decade. And then I get into how he potentially swung the 2016 election from Hillary Clinton to Donald Trump. There's various studies that have concluded probably, not definitely. Look, he launched a sneak attack on the Trump campaign. There is a ridiculous clip of Jim Comey where he's being interviewed by Nicole Wallace and he's high-fiving and the crowd is whooping it up because he broke ordinary FBI protocol to send in agents to interview Michael Flynn. Not at all the Michael Flynn fan, but Comey did laugh about the fact that he tricked basically the new White House and snuck in some agents when he knew he wouldn't be able to ordinarily get them in to question Michael Flynn. The guy's a leaker. Look, Trump's instincts about Jim Comey are kind of correct. Like, the guy is a leaker, and I'll call him a fibber. He does stretch the truth. He definitely leaked. There's a crazy clip out there of Anderson Cooper interviewing Jim Comey in 2018, where it was known and admitted that Comey took sensitive FBI information, gave it to a friend, and told his friend to give it to the New York Times. And Anderson is like, so you are a leaker. And Comey's like, well, that's not how I define a leak. And Anderson's like, how do you define a leak? He's like, it's got to be certain information. And it's like, Comey makes no sense. And Anderson Cooper is openly like, you're full of crap, basically. So nobody likes the guy. Okay, fine. All that said, this indictment is insane. I mean, he's charged with a criminal threat against the life of the president. 8647. Okay, first of all, I don't know whether, I'm sure Comey did those shells himself because he just does that kind of crap. It doesn't really matter. But what matters is the posting of the image on Instagram. 86 is nowhere near, not even within yelling distance of clear enough of a threat to be a crime. What does 86 mean? They go, oh, I heard Trump say, oh, mobsters use it. No, they don't. I mean, trust me, I was a mob prosecutor. You know that for a long time. They don't. And then people go, oh, they use it in the movies. No, they don't. Like in Casino, there's a vague reference to it, but they don't say it in Godfather, Goodfellas, Sopranos.
Whack. They usually go with whack.
Right. By the way, even if 86 was used sometimes to mean murder, which it occasionally is, that's nowhere near enough. It's if you look at all the dictionaries, by far the more common usage is just we run out of something, we need to cut off something.
I've worked in restaurants when I was a young man, and the 86 meant we were out of the chicken parm.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not even close. And the fact that someone can point to like some one line in Casino does not get you past the First Amendment and into the realm of a criminal threat. And there's a Supreme Court case I talked about Sunday the other day from 1969 with a Vietnam War protester who said, I'm going to paraphrase, but it's pretty darn close. He said, I'm not going. If they ever put a rifle in my hands, the first person I want to get in my sights is LBJ. Okay, way more explicit, way more violent, dangerous, clear. And even that, the U.S. Supreme Court said, that's not enough. That's not a true threat if you look at all the circumstances. So if I want to get a rifle in my hands and get the president in my sights, as this person said about LBJ in 1969, if that's not a criminal threat, 8647 is nowhere near enough. That's only the first ground for dismissal. He's also got selective prosecution, vindictive prosecution. No, that's all stronger than ever because he now beat their first case.
And what about the that conservative Jack Posobiec or whatever his name is?
Well,
literally posted 8646, which was Biden.
And the funny thing is, Todd Blanche was asked about that the other day, and Blanche said something like, they're totally different. It's like
one number.
The same. They're literally exactly the same. I mean, one's Biden, one's Trump, but they're exactly the same. So that's selective prosecution, and vindictive is the payback thing. So
let me ask you this, because this is what's gnawing at me. Okay, let's give Trump and Patel and the DOJ and the government the benefit of the doubt, just for hypothetical purposes for a second. Okay, so James Comey is this guy who wants to take out the president. A year ago, he posts this seashells thing.
Right.
According to acting AG Todd Blanche, it's not just the seashells. We have other stuff. Yeah. He's suggesting that there's other evidence, which wasn't in the indictment. Wasn't in the indictment, by the way, right?
The whole.
But here's my question. Here's my question. It's been a year. Why has this guy been allowed to walk around as a potential assassin?
Because Blanche says, we've been actively investigating him. Bull crap. Both of those things are bull. So first of all, you don't have to put all your evidence in an indictment. You ordinarily would not put all your evidence in an indictment, right?
Even in this case, kind of case?
Well, you can, but you don't have to, and sometimes you don't. But like, when I say your evidence, your indictment is a statement of what you're going to prove, but not necessarily how you're going to prove it. You can put it in there, but you don't have to. But this case, the post is the charge. The charge is the post. Like, unless they have, Todd is so full of it, he said, we have other stuff. I'm sure they talked to some other people and got some marginal, irrelevant information. But unless they have some unknown, information that Comey was secretly going, I'm going to post this, and I hope it inspires someone to take a shot at the president. Unless they have something like that, which I'm sure they don't, then it's just going to be marginal fluff. Todd, you have to understand, Blanche's incentive right now is just the short term. He wants that sugar rush. He wants to be able to show Trump, see, look what I did, indictment. And Todd knows, as I do, the way federal cases work, this case is not going to get thrown out for several more months because there's going to be back and forth briefing. The judge will then issue a ruling. And the decision on who's going to be AG will almost certainly be made before that. So Blanche's incentive right now, and I'll give the same disclaimer. I've known Blanche for 20 years back, Mimi and I, we all know each other back from the SDNY. And Blanche, his incentive is just look good, give some red meat over the next month, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, hope you get that nomination. And when it gets dismissed 3 months from now, hopefully, in Blanche's view, that'll be too late. And I don't think Trump cares anyway. They'll just say
it's such an unconscionable dereliction of duty, in my opinion. Let's talk about another really important legal situation, a ruling that came down recently by the Supreme Court, which ruled against Louisiana in its redistricting of that state's congressional map. So what did this ruling effectively do to the Voting Rights Act of 1965?
Well, I'm not sure what's even left of it, right? There's a little bit of a back and forth between the majority and the dissent. The dissent basically says, you've killed it. And the majority says, no, we've just made sure that it doesn't conflict with the Constitution. But I think most intellectually honest people will tell you there's essentially no teeth at all left of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And this has been a 3-step process really over the years where the Supreme Court has taken piece after piece away. The core of the ruling is states are no longer allowed to consider race at all when they're drawing their districts. And what was done at times under the Voting Rights Act, including in the Louisiana case, Louisiana's original map had 1 out of 6 majority black districts. That was struck down under the Voting Rights Act because the lower courts found, well, it doesn't adequately represent, it dilutes the black vote because black citizens, black residents are 1/3 of the population, and there's only 1 out of 6 majority black districts. So they come back with a 2 out of 6 map, and the Supreme Court says, no, if you've intentionally drawn a district with an eye towards race, no matter who you're trying to benefit there, that violates the Constitution's non-discrimination clauses. So that means that it will no longer be permissible to say, we're whatever state, we would like to have X number of majority black districts, so we're going to draw it that way. You just cannot do that anymore. And I think a big part of the debate between the parties, between the justices, is whether we've come far enough, right? Because the dissenters, the 3 liberal justices, Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson, say we have a long way. We've made progress from the 1960s. We're not all the way there. We're certainly not perfect. We've made progress, but a lot of that has been because of the Voting Rights Act, right? The famous quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg in one of the earlier cases was, getting rid of that portion of the Voting Rights Act is like getting rid of your umbrella because you're not getting wet in a rainstorm, right? Like the Voting Rights Act, the liberals argue, is one of the main reasons there's been progress. The conservatives basically say, we're not supposed to have these things forever. They were intended to help us make progress. We've made progress, enough progress in the conservatives' view, and you don't hold on to your umbrella after the rainstorm is over or is all but stopped. So I think there's an interesting debate there. I am not as outraged at the opinion as some are. I don't think we should be using race to draw our district lines forever for the rest of history. But I'm also not sure this was the right time for it. I mean, we are in gerrymandering chaos both ways now. And what this is going to do as a practical matter is open up, and we're seeing this happen, certain southern states to redistrict and get rid of some of those districts. And one thing that really does give me pause is there's a good chance that there are almost no or very, very few majority black congressional districts in all of the South. And I don't think that's what we want. I mean, we want roughly representative government. I don't believe in like numerical exactness. I don't think every state has to go, what's our population? Let's rig every, we're 10 we have 10 districts and we're 10% Hispanic, so we need one Hispanic district, and 10% Asian, so one Asian district, and 30% Black, so three Black. Like, that gets ridiculous. But the practical effect of this is that yes, you're no longer allowed to use race in drawing those lines, no matter what your purpose or intent is.
Yeah, and I think that, context, as you alluded to, is very important, because it's not just what this ruling means for Louisiana. It's what the Republican Party is trying to do all over the country, especially in the Deep South, where there's a lot of minority voters. And so in this particular case, it just seems like 30% of the population is Black or people of color.
Yeah.
Why not have 2 of the 6 seats be truly representative of that demographic?
Let me throw two thoughts at you. One, isn't it racist to say, isn't it the epitome of racist conduct to say, I'm going to look at that person or this group of people's pigmentation of their skin. Based on that, I'm going to draw broad conclusions about who they are, what they believe in, and how they're going to act politically. Isn't that inherently racist? I mean, right, to say, well, Black people all sort of have the same interests. They all vote the same. So let's give them
I don't know if it's racist. I'm not sure if it's racist the way you're intending the question to be, but it's dumb. I mean, based on the reason you're giving. So I kind of agree with you, but I just think there's such an assault on people of color in this country when it comes to the election process right now, and in the most important election we've ever had or going to have. And so while I understand what you're saying, this year it just seems like it's coming from all sides. So it's like, you know what, all bets are off. Yeah. We just got to make sure there's equal representation.
We've reached gerrymandering Armageddon in a lot of ways, and Trump started it. Let's be clear. The other thing I would say is, and I had a caller into SiriusXM the other day who said he was a Black man living in Tennessee, and he did not like this opinion, but understood both sides, but was opposed to it, and he was great. So I kept him on and asked him a handful of questions. And I said, let me ask you this. I said, let's say you had a hypothetical state with 4 million residents in the South, and 1 million of the residents were Black. And this state, let's say, had 4 congressional districts. I know congressional districts aren't 1 million people each. They're more like 350, 400,000 each. But let's just say, so you have 4 districts, 4 million people, 1 million of your residents are Black. Does it give Black voters more power to put all million in one district and say, there you go, you're going to get one definite, majority, heavily majority Black district, and you're going to have no presence or minimal presence in the other 3? Or does it give Black voters more power to say, you're going to have 250,000 in each of the 4, so you're not going to have a majority, but you're going to be a force that needs to be reckoned with and heard in all 4? And he actually said, that's a really good question. I don't know which I'd prefer. So I don't know that, there are different gerrymandering practices called, what's it called? Packing and cracking, right? Like, packing means you pack all the minorities in one district and give them one so you don't have to worry about them elsewhere. But then cracking means you take a minority stronghold or any voter group and you crack it into 10 different pieces so they can't have a majority, right? So I'm not so sure that creating majority-minority districts is ultimately maximizing minorities' voting power. But I do see that each way. And I frankly don't know where I come out on which is better.
Yeah, it's as predictive as gerrymandering is in general. I mean, there are a lot of people who believe that this could all backfire because, when you start spreading Democrats into other districts, what's happening is that you're going to reduce the overall margins of victory so that,
you could cut it too close.
That's right. Yeah. So all of it is nonsense. And you're right. He did start it with Texas. I'm not sure where the hell it's going to go. But let's shift to what is going to be one of the most consequential decisions handed down by the Supreme Court soon, I would suspect. And that's birthright citizenship. They've yet to announce its ruling. Yeah. What's taking so long? And we spoke about this several weeks ago. Are you still confident that Trump is going to lose on this?
Yes, I'm still very confident. So what's taking so long is the argument only just happened April 1st. So it would still be it would still be quick for them. I think this will be one of the last ones of the term. I would look for it in late June. Having listened to the oral argument, I'm more confident now that Trump will lose. He's going to lose at least, certainly the 3 liberals will be against him. He's going to lose at least 3 of the Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Roberts group. It's going to be 6-3 against Trump on Birthright, maybe 7-2, maybe 9-0, maybe 8. I mean, but the problem is just simply the weakness of the Trump administration's position was exposed because they keep trying to take the language of the Constitution, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. And they keep trying to argue subject to the jurisdiction thereof actually means domicile, meaning the parents are here legally and permanently and intend to stay here. But the justices, even the conservatives, were like, first of all, it's not what it says. Second of all, how would you even measure that? Would you have to interview everybody and go, what are your intentions? Do you intend to stay here or not? Like, it's impossible. It's an unworkable standard. It's not what the language says. I promise you that Trump is going to lose this Birthright case. And look, the thing is, it's on hold now. It's been on hold. So like none of his ridiculous new rules have ever taken effect on Birthright. And I don't think they ever will. I think he's going to lose this. We know it. He's going to lose this. He's going to lash out in particular at the conservative justices who went against him. He's going to say, fill in the blank, Amy Coney Barrett, whoever, Justice Kavanaugh had been a horrible disappointment and they're traitors and blah, blah, blah. But I remain very confident in that.
Let's stick with the judicial system for a second, because there's a lot of people, myself included, who kind of at the end of the day rely on this system as a guardrail, one of the only guardrails against this autocratic overreach of this administration. But there was an article that came out the other day. It was about the statistics of how many court rulings the Trump administration is just thumbing its nose at and saying, for whatever reason, we're not going to obey these rulings. You know, when you look at the case we were talking about before, the Epstein Transparency Act, when you look at other cases that are prominent, immigration in particular. What do you make of all this? Should we be worried that the court system is not the guardrail that we think and hope it is and need it to be?
Yeah, I don't know that exact article, but a lot of the disobeying of court orders, which is a bad thing, has been because they're just a mess when it comes to immigration. Judges are saying, get this person in court. They're not bringing the person to court. They're bringing them in late, or make sure this person gets a hearing. That is inexcusable. But I don't know how many of those have, and I also don't count, we're going to appeal this. I mean, that's not one thing. Like, what does the article highlight? Is it mostly immigration cases where they're not? Because I'm not aware of a major ruling.
It's like just like a lot of lower court rulings like across the board. I was kind of surprised.
Look, they definitely towed the line on some of the immigration and exceeded the line on some of the immigration decisions. But I also think it's important to keep in mind, like, the most effective check on executive power right now has been the courts. And I know the courts have done things that have helped Trump, that have enabled Trump, that people don't like, that liberals don't like. But you also have to keep, you can't expect to like every ruling, right? And I don't agree with every ruling, but I do think the perspective is important. So why did Trump's 2020 attempt to steal the 2020 election fail? Because it was rejected by 60 courts, including the U.S. Supreme Court. Why are there no National Guard troops on the streets in Illinois? Because the court said you can't do that. Why are Trump's tariffs, emergency tariffs, struck down and gone? Because the court said you can't issue those tariffs.
But he's still threatening tariffs.
He's allowed under different laws. It's no different than Joe Biden getting student loans struck down by the Supreme Court saying, okay, I'm going to try again under a different law. You're allowed to do that. The Supreme Court doesn't say no student debt relief, no tariffs. They say your attempt to use this law to get this policy is no good. Right. I mean, I could go on. There's a lot of things the courts have blocked Trump. Why does Lisa Cook still have her job on the Fed? Because the court blocked that effort.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement.
Yeah, so like, I do want to push back against what I hear sometimes, which is like, all this court does is enable Trump. All they do, immunity. I know. You and I have talked about, I don't like the immunity decision. I think it went too far. But I think we need to acknowledge that the courts have been the primary, not perfect, but the most effective check. And when I say the courts, let me include the judiciary, the judicial system. Why did the attempts to indict Jim Comey and Letitia James fail? Because judges threw them out and grand juries rejected it. Why did the attempt to indict Mark Kelly and Alyssa Slotkin fail? Because grand juries rejected it. Why did the attempt to go after and investigate Jerome Powell fail? Because judges rejected the subpoenas. So, and I do think, I wrote a piece for New York Magazine called like The Rise of the Anti-Trump Jury. And I basically said, this administration and Justice Department have compromised their own integrity. and have politicized things to the point where it's now commonly understood by jurors and grand jurors. And you're seeing them reject. Why did the sandwich thrower, the guy who chucked the sandwich at the National Guard, why did he get acquitted? He definitely threw a sandwich at the guy. That's technically assault, but it's a ridiculous case. And so I think we should recognize, I'm not saying we need to have a national party and celebrate how great, because they haven't been perfect, but the courts writ large have been I would argue, the most effective and maybe only effective check on Trump's effort to expand his executive power.
Mm-hmm. Last question. Jimmy Kimmel, the FCC, Disney, ABC. We know that FCC Chairman Brendan Carr has opened an early off-cycle review of Disney-owned ABC broadcast station licenses over a joke that Kimmel made that Trump didn't like. This is blatant weaponization of the government, obviously, against Trump's perceived enemies. Is it legal to do this?
No, it's obvious First Amendment retaliation based on the content of speech, right? And I did Abby Phillips' show the other day, which is, the debate show, and I said to the panel, I said, did you keep
your hand away from Adam Mockler?
By the way, I'm friends with both of those guys. I want credit for discovering Adam.
I don't know if I'd admit that out loud, though.
Oh no, people hate the fact that I'm friends with Scott, but I'm also close with Adam. I have Adam. I love having him as a guest. You should have. He's a great guest, and he's so impressive. He's so well prepared and thoughtful, and he was 100% in the right there, and Scott was 100% in the wrong. That was embarrassing what Scott did there. But what we talk? Oh, FCC. On that show, I said, does anyone at this table? And we had our usual 2 conservatives, 2 liberals, and I was the sort of expert. I said, does anyone here believe the FCC should be in the business of policing the content of speech? And nobody, even the conservatives said no. And but that's obviously what they're doing. And what's funny, Andy, I said, the way we're even discussing this here shows that we don't even believe the pretext, because the pretext that the FCC is given is not, well, we don't like what Jimmy Kimmel said. It's ABC is involved in DEI hiring. And we're like, it's like a pretext piled on top of a pretext here. It's obvious they're policing speech. And if anyone ever, wanted to bring a lawsuit, if any adverse actions were taken, you could argue look, it's not First Amendment. It doesn't violate the First Amendment for a private company to fire you based on what you said. So let's take ABC out of it. If somebody said something on ESPN, political or otherwise, that the owners of ESPN didn't like, they could fire that person. That's not a First Amendment violation. But where it becomes a First Amendment violation is where the government gets involved in a coercive way, right? The First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, a government. And so if the FCC government is leaning on ABC to do something, and then ABC does it, fires somebody, then yes, I think there could be a lawsuit. Or certainly if the FCC itself takes action based on the content of someone's speech, then there could be a First Amendment lawsuit there. So look, the law firms and colleges that have pushed back on First Amendment basis, some of them have bent a knee to their shame, but those that have fought in court have all won. Every college or university, every media outlet that pushed back, every law firm that pushed back has won in courts on First Amendment, and I think would continue to do so.
The real staggering thing is if you go back several years and you look at postings by Brendan Carr, he is a vociferous advocate of free speech and against this kind of autocratic bullshit. I don't know what happened to him, but you could say that about most of the cabinet. They sold their souls for
Let me tell you one crazy thing. Sarah Fisher, who's a colleague of mine, media reporter for Axios, and she's on CNN. She said on air the other day that she went on the FCC's website, like as this was all happening, and it said, FCC, we are an independent agency, blah, blah, blah. She was smart enough to screenshot it. Several hours later, they had taken the word independent out, and it just said, we are an agency that blah, blah, blah. So that tells you a lot.
Wow. Yeah. Great stuff as always, Elie.
Thanks, Andy.
Come back
Great
soon.
Talking to you. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye. This episode was produced and edited by me, Andy Ostroy. It was co-produced by Maddie Rosenberg and Jen Hammoud for Radio Free Rhinecliff, with additional editing by Maddie Rosenberg, music by Andrew Hollander, and graphic design by Cricket Langell. And with a special thanks to our sponsor, The Epicurean. Again, thanks for listening. Please rate and review wherever you get your podcasts, and subscribe to the Backroom with Andy Ostroy YouTube channel, where you can watch full videos of our interviews. See you next time.